welcome. You're listening to the Sustainable Jungle podcast. We share the uplifting stories from people all over the world working in a variety of disciplines and sectors to change the world for the better. I'm Joy, and today I'm chatting with Kate Flynn, the CEO and founder of Sun Swell, a company based in California that provides clean ingredient, plant-based pantry goods in compostable packaging. We cover a bunch of juicy topics, including the evolution of Sun Swell into a mission-based B-Corp, making low-waste living more accessible, Kate's personal journey, sustainability in the food industry, Kate's advice on building a business with meaning, and so much more. I also briefly mentioned how we included Sun Swell in our recent article about more sustainable Halloween candy and alternatives to candy. So if you're opting for a lower impact Halloween this year, I'd recommend checking out that article and Sun Swell's bites and bars and dried fruit range, which would be much healthier and more sustainable alternatives to traditional candy. Now, as always, you can find the show notes and all the relevant links over at sustainablejungle.com/podcast. Now, without further ado, here's Kate Flynn. Hello, Kate. So lovely to have you join me today. Let's start with an overview of you. Who are you? Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
Sure. So I'm Kate Flynn. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Sun Swell. I'm also a mom of two littles, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I live in Santa Barbara, California. I actually was born in Houston, Texas, but I only lived there for a year. I spent my childhood in Ohio and in North Carolina. I moved out to California for college. I went to UC Santa Barbara, and that was my entry into California, where I decided I was just meant to be here. It felt like home, I guess. But I went to UCSB. I studied business economics. I started my career as a CPA in accounting. It wasn't necessarily what my passion was, but it was a good launch pad to figure out what I wanted to do in life. I ultimately went and got my MBA, did some management consulting, and eventually left the corporate world to start my own business, which I'm sure we'll maybe talk a little bit more about how that happened later. But now I'm full-time entrepreneur. And mom.
And mom, yeah. We were just talking before we started recording about your kiddos who are 18 months and 3 years old, which is like, yeah, mine's 2. And as I said before, I'm just amazed that you managed to do all this and have 2 of them around the same age. It's crazy.
It's pretty crazy, but I feel like it has forced me for the first time. I mean, first with my first one and then even more with my second, really forced me to have work-life balance. I mean, it's not ever really balanced, right? Because it always feels crazy, but it's the first time in my life that I am not working like all the time, crazy hours. I'm just super efficient with my work. And it's my evenings and weekends are filled with the kids, which keeps it really busy, but it's not just work. It's work plus kids. So they've kind of forced me out of some of my old habits, I guess.
Yeah, that like being forced to be a little bit more present. That's something that I've noticed, is that like no longer thinking about like a gazillion things. Well, I am, of course, but in the moment where the kid's like, you will race me this monster truck right now.
Yes.
I'm like, yes, okay, we're racing monster trucks right now. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. And what initially sparked or drove your interest in sustainability?
So I would say I'm definitely not the traditional like environmentalist. I didn't take classes in environmentalism. I never really was like particularly focused in that specific study. However, as a person, I believe in kindness, and that is to people, and that's also to the earth. Like it just is inherently in me, I think largely driven by my mom. My mom is the type of person who would never kill a spider in the house because she wanted to make sure she caught it and brought it outside, even though she was terrified of it. And so I really grew up with that compassion for all things, both people and animals and insects and, nature as well. And it just led me to, it's just led me to naturally care about sustainability. I say I'm like the classic example of somebody who tries the best they can, but also isn't like the perfect zero waster by any means. Whenever I'm with my friends or is like, I'm so sorry I have like my coffee cup in front of you. I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm definitely not perfect. I'm just trying little steps along the way to be better. But also an entrepreneur and a mom, you can't, and with most people, our lives are so busy, you can't be perfect at everything. So just doing what I can.
For sure. And I think it's an outdated notion that you need to have a degree in environmental science to care about the environment, right? Like, everybody should care. Everybody should care about spiders.
Yes.
I mean, I know not everybody loves spiders, but like we should have a social right to care, and we shouldn't need to justify our care. Like it should be allowed for everybody to be as sustainable as they can. And it resonates with being the perfect sustainable mom. I was a lot better before my child arrived.
Yeah. It was easier to be better before there was like more to do in your life. And now you're like, oh, now I got to think about like the diapers and the diaper and all these other things that you didn't have to think. So it's just more to think about, less time to do it. Yeah.
For sure. It's given me a lot more empathy for others. Like, I used to be like, why can't you just get this right? Like, this is just the basics of getting recycling or whatever it is right. And now I'm like, I get it. Like, people have different situations and are doing the best that they can with what they have. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, that brings us over neatly to Sun Swell. So we know personally about Sun Swell, as we featured the brand on our site numerous times. But for those out there listening who haven't heard about Sun Swell, maybe you can share a little bit more about what it is and how it came to be.
Sure. So at Sun Swell, our mission as a company is to help eliminate single-use plastics from the packaged food industry. And so in terms of what we actually sell, we sell pantry goods and snacks, all in compostable packaging. We say that in a perfect world, you would not buy anything packaged. You buy everything at your bulk store or your farmer's market. But we want to be the option when you don't have time to do that. So when your life is so busy that you can't go refill all your reusable bags, at the bulk store, that maybe is a 20-minute drive to, you can order our stuff online and feel good knowing you're still having a plastic-free pantry or plastic-free food for the stuff you can't make yourself or buy without packaging. So we always say we're the second best option, not the first best option. But we didn't really start exactly like that. When we started Sun Swell, my co-founder is my husband. We started about 5 years ago, and we actually started as more of a traditional CPG company. So we started with a line of basically those bites, like the Bliss bites or energy bites. We started with a line of those, and we started in plastic packaging. We weren't doing anything related to plastic free. We had sustainability aspects to our brand, like everything was organic, and we tried to source locally. And we were a B-Corp from like the beginning, so we always had that kind of those things ingrained in our business, but we were doing anything as it relates to plastic free. And we started to scale and started to feel really, really guilty that we were contributing to all the single-use plastic.
Right.
So we started to investigate, like, why do we have to use plastic? Are there other options? We learned there were other options, but nobody's using them because they are really hard across the entire supply chain, everything from manufacturing to distribution. It's not as easy to just flip a switch and go from plastic packaging to compostable. And that's why you don't see other brands doing it, at least here in the United States. I know that globally that everybody's a little bit farther along than we are, but we're really behind here. And so it kind of evolved from this goal of being the next big snack food brand to really being the food brand that figures out how to do it without plastic. And so it's, we went from one product to now we have over 50 types of products, everything from nuts to dried fruits to oats to banana chips, all this stuff for your pantry. And we're still kind of evolving and learning like what the market wants and what customers want. But with that North Star of moving the industry away from plastic. And we just keep working towards that and letting our business evolve based on what the market's looking for.
Yeah, amazing. And have you done any customer segmentation? Do you know who's buying your products and roughly sort of what their profiles look like?
Yeah. So when we look at we sell both wholesale and on our website, and the businesses are obviously a little bit different than consumers, but at the end of the day, our core consumer, whether it's somebody shopping on our website or a business, is somebody who's looking to move closer into a zero waste, plastic free lifestyle.
Right.
They're usually not perfect. Like I said, if you're the person who's like the really, really like the person who's like nailed zero waste living, you probably aren't buying anything packaged. Like you probably already have your routine and you have other options. But our customers are the people who care and they're trying, but they also really value convenience. Tends to be women, tends to be a lot of moms, working professionals, the people who are just really, really busy, but trying to make those better choices. And similarly, like from our business customers, it's businesses who have sustainability initiatives and goals in place and are looking to make those positive changes and step in the right direction.
Yeah, right. Amazing. We actually, we just featured Sun Swell in our article about Halloween candy as like an alternative.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like you don't want, like, how do you do low waste for Halloween candy? Like that was actually quite a tricky article to write because, you know, there's not that many options. Whereas you guys have really tasty treats that are not like sugar, but are really yummy and that are packaged. So like you've got that sort of, you know, hygiene factor taken care of if you're giving other children candy.
Well, and I talk a lot about the packaging because I think that's what like really sets us apart in like the overall market of food. But at the end of the day, what's inside is like healthy and delicious food and real food. So we only use real food ingredients. So like we have some bars that are just made with dates and cashews and like spices. And even we sell like a dried mango, that's organic dried mango. We sell them in like the single serve packs. And so you can throw them in your kid's lunch or for Halloween or whatever. And they're delicious. And it's like good dried fruit is really nature's candy. Like it can curb that sweet tooth. It's like, and yes, it's not a Snickers bar, like it never will be. But a lot of times, especially when you're feeding like kids and they haven't like been exposed to all that stuff as much, eating like a yummy dried mango is totally, and as for, you know, any adults who are also like trying to make healthy choices, it's totally satisfying to satisfy your sweet tooth. It's just, and so it's amazing when we just turn to like nature, like all that stuff is there. Like we don't need to engineer it in like a lab and like make up fake ingredients. Like we already have it in front of us. We just need to go back to simplicity, you know?
Do you sell dried pineapple?
We have dried pineapple rings. Yeah.
I tried that the first time the other day and I was like blown away. How delicious.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah.
So tasty.
Delicious.
So I wanted to talk about ingredients and a little bit more about the product range. You already explained quite a bit about it, but so there's the snacks and pantry goods. Are there any sort of other do you use any other sort of structure to break down how you think about categories and how you sort of try to cover a particular segment of the market?
Yeah, so it's mainly snacks and pantry goods. The way we think about it is the snacks are like the grab and go, like that's most popular among our like wholesale, our business customers who, for example, we sell to a lot of like corporate offices who put our snacks in like their break rooms. And so they want like a bar or a little trail mix or something grab and go. And then the pantry stuff, we kind of think about it as like nuts and dried fruits. And then our superfoods and our grains and, you know, so we don't have an unlimited assortment. Like we don't have 1,000 SKUs, so you can't find like literally everything you want, but we try to offer a little bit of everything. So if you want like oats, you can get oats, but we only have like rolled oats, not steel cut oats. Gotcha. So our ultimate, and we're continuing to build out our assortment on our website and also what we offer wholesale, but our vision is to kind of be like a Costco or a Trader Joe's, where it's like we have a lot of private label, our own branded stuff, not a lot of options. And then maybe we throw in some other, right now, like nobody else is selling stuff in compostable, so we can't even offer other people's stuff. But eventually, as more brands start to become use zero waste packaging, like ultimately maybe integrating them too. But we think if you think about, you know, where you can shop as a consumer online, there's a lot of solutions for zero waste bathroom or zero waste home care, but the zero waste pantry, like that's where you kind of get stuck and you end up like just buying all your stuff in plastic. So that's really that mecca that we're focused on.
Yeah, and it's a critical segment. If for those who can't get to a bulk food store, or as you say, who don't have time, if they want to fill up their nut jar or their oats jar,
Yeah.
like a critical staple for a family, it's a really great alternative, as you say, to a bulk store, but really
Yeah.
fantastic, easy access option. And do you
Yeah.
serve the entire US, or is it?
Yeah. Right now, in entire US. Yep.
Yeah, amazing. And the ingredients and sourcing, you talked about things like organic mango, which is amazing. So you obviously prioritize things like organic as as key attributes for your products. Do you
Yep.
have sort of a policy on that, or how do you think about ingredients and sourcing?
Yeah, it's funny. So I'll talk about them. I'll talk about ingredient sourcing separately. They're one, but just first of all, just from like an ingredient attribute standpoint, when we started, and up until about 6 months ago, we were 100% organic. And that goes back to the early days when we were just a snack food company. We were just making snacks. We're like, that's one of our attributes is that we're organic. But as I talked about, our mission evolved and like our North Star became around eliminating single-use plastic. What we found was while there is a cohort of people who appreciate everything organic, there's a lot of people who are trying to live zero waste plastic free, where when you have only organic, it makes price points really inaccessible. And so, and we kept coming back to we kept coming back to this mission of like, we're trying to eliminate plastic. What is the hierarchy? Is the number one thing plastic free, or is the number one thing organic? And so we still offer, most of what we offer is still organic, but we're starting to add in some non-organic options in categories where it's like, from knowing how food is farmed, where we know it's not as essential from like a chemicals getting, I mean, I still promote organic farming, like organic farming is more sustainable, like period. But in terms of like actually chemicals getting to the food, a lot of nuts, like they aren't really exposed to they aren't really exposed to the stuff the way that like a tomato would be or produce would be. So we are selectively adding some non-organic options because that's what our customers were asking us for, is like the number one thing is like, can you just like, I want to shop here, but I can't because I'm organic. So again, thinking of like the overall like grocery store concept, if you're an organic shopper, you can go into the grocery store and buy all organic, but you can also buy something, other options. So we're starting to expand some that to make it more accessible. But the one attributes that are consistent, regardless of whether or not organic, is that we use real food ingredients. We don't do any, even like on our snacks, no added sugars, preservatives, additives, anything like that. Everything's plant-based, vegan, everything. And that's, you could be vegan or you can not be vegan, but we want to just like, when it comes to selling stuff online, like it's hard to do any, like that's plant-based, we felt like is the most, sustainable way to do it. And then, everything right now is still gluten-free. And that's something that we're doing a lot of research with our customers right now to understand, like, where does that fall on your hierarchy? Is like that essential, or you just need to know whether or not it's gluten-free?
Right.
And then from a sourcing perspective, we start with trying to source in our home state of California. If we can, we do. Then if we can't, we go outside of California into the broader US. And if we can't get in the US, that's when we bring in, we have a few suppliers that bring in from other countries. And like for certain things like dried pineapples, they aren't grown in the US, or if they are, it's in very, very small batch, not something that we would have access to at price points that would work for selling them online. So that's kind of where that's like how we make the decisions around what to bring in.
It's like full of trade-offs, isn't it? It's like you got to find the right thing for the right customer.
Yeah. Well, and listening to your customers, like if it was like up to me, like I was so set on like, we're never moving outside organic. Like we just can't. But what's so funny is as a consumer, if I'm not shopping our brand, I don't always buy organic. I buy organic on select things. I pick and choose. Like I buy, it's like dirty dozen, clean 15. Like I'm looking for, depending on the item, I might buy organic or I might not. As a founder, I really wanted to keep that, but our customers were like, please give us other options because we can't spend this much on our almonds, but we still want almonds, So And we're still trying it. We'll have to see, like, we'll see how it works. So far, the feedback's been really positive. And, but that was like listening to the customer, which is like the most important thing you can do when you're building a business.
So cool. Yeah, we buy in Melbourne where I live, we buy from Ceres Fair Food, which is
Okay.
similar, like they provide
Yep.
grocery online basically,
Yep.
and pantry staples. They often send in compostable bags as well, which is great.
Yep.
They don't have snack packs. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
I wish they would do that. But they have a similar situation where they used to pretty much do only organic, and more recently they've started offering alternatives for the customer to make the choice. And the alternatives are typically things where they're helping a particular community. So it might be like a refugee community who's growing a particular type of vegetable, and you can make the choice to support that family or that farm by buying their lettuce or whatever it is. So it's giving the consumer the choice to make the trade-off however they see fit, which I think is great. It brings in some other elements and some other options and at different price points, as you say.
Yep.
Which I think is super cool. And now, obviously, packaging is like a huge part of it now, a huge part of the Sun Swell story. So, and we've already talked a little bit about compostable, and why did you choose the sort of plastic type? I mean, it's like compostable plastic. Is it bioplastic, or what exactly is the packaging?
Yeah, we work with a couple of different ones. One of them is made from like wood pulp, and then another one's from non-GMO soy. So we have a couple of different types we've been working with and experimenting. I'm trying to get my hands on some seaweed based, but it's not like what's really. So this is like the breakdown of like the compostable packaging, like really high level overview is compostable technology for food has been around for a while. But it's also a very, very, very hot market for like R&D and like new companies, a lot of funding going into that, like the material sciences of like this world. And when we started, we went with like what was readily available and what had been like tried and tested on food. So like the seaweed based stuff that I'm really interested in. I'm still waiting on the company I'm talking to about it is eager to partner with us, but they're still bringing it to market. So like they've been working on getting me a sample roll for several months now. So it's like eventually we'll be able to start trialing that and hopefully turn into that. But you like paralyze yourself if you wait for, and that's like the certified home compostable seaweed. I mean, that would be like my dream is to have like something that's made of seaweed that like is like certified home compostable. Like that would be amazing.
Very cool.
Right now, we're actually moving everything to it's a paper-based material and it's certified industrial compostable. It's not certified home, although it will break. I mean, it breaks down and I have like a Lomi, one of those tabletop composters, and it breaks down in 5 hours with like no trace. So like it will break down at home, but we can't tell people to compost at home because it has been certified. So there's all these nuances in the world of compostable packaging. But yeah, the one we started with is just what was available at the time. And now we're moving to a paper-based one, which we're really excited about just because I mean, we love it. We've actually some of our products are already in it, but we're moving everything over to it.
Very cool. We actually, the last episode that I recorded, which hasn't been published yet, I'm not sure when it will be, but was with the founder of the packaging manufacturer Tipa. And so we covered sort of the depths of what home compostable versus industrial compostable means. But what was really interesting for me to reflect on was that even though we have these solutions for flexible packaging, as imperfect as they are, they're not exactly perfect. They're made with fossil fuels still and so on. But at the end of the day, they are home compostable if they're certified. In the case of Tipa, the home compostable range is OK TUV home compostable. But part of the problem is that the consumer doesn't always do the right thing when it comes to disposal. So even though it's compostable, it might still end up in the trash or waterways or whatever. And I think the Sun Swell customers are probably a little different in that they're very intentional about coming to Sun Swell, would be my guess. And have probably likely gone out of their way to do so. But is that problem what helped drive the sort of send back program for you, that sort of the educational element around the send back program?
Yes, it's so funny. So actually the very first packaging that we used was Tipa's, like back in the day. And we love Tipa. They are their US presence. They don't have quite the presence in the US as they want to have and as I want them to. So we've actually tried a couple times to get things going again, but from a supply chain perspective, like we never seem to be able to like put that puzzle piece together for the two of us. But I'm still hopeful in the future. They were our first one back in like when we very first started, we worked with them and they were awesome. And that was actually, it's funny you brought them up in our send back program because it all kind of ties back. So I dove into compostable packaging without knowing the end of life was an issue. I was pretty naive. Like I said, I'm just a mom and like a founder, like, cool, I want to do the right thing. I want to use compostable packaging. I didn't really know that much about the end of life until I started like, once we decide we were making the switch, we started moving everything in compostable. And then I started to like think about it a little bit more of like, okay, like I just want to make sure we're clear. We can tell people these can go in like the compost bin, the industrial compost bins. And that's when I actually had a whole project and we thought that was how it worked. And then we were at, it was an Earth Day fair, like here in Santa Barbara. We have an Earth Day. Actually, Earth Day was founded in Santa Barbara, or our US Earth Day was started in Santa Barbara. So we have like a big Earth Day festival every year. We were talking to the waste department and we were like, hey, we're so stoked. We're launching these bags, like, or our products in these bags. People can just like toss it in the compost, right? And they're like, oh, no. We don't take anything other than food scraps. And we're like, whoa, what? Like you don't take, but your industrial compost. And that's when we started to peel back all the layers and learn that it's just not that easy to like, I mean, there's so many things. You have to have an industrial compost. And then the industrial compost has to take things beyond food scraps. And like, so that's when we started to learn about all the complexities of it. And I remember like talking to Tipa and be like, did you know about this? And I think like some of the stuff in the US is a lot worse than it is in other countries. And I was like telling that like they were definitely like some of the stuff they were shocked at like some of like the findings that I was finding by just asking questions to people here. And we ended up deciding to do like at Sun Swell, we decided to do a send back program because I'm like, I just want there to be some option that we know is reliable. Like we can only do as much as we can. And at a certain point, I can only hope the consumer or the person buying our products is also thinking about it, but we can only do so much. And for us, having that send back option gives everybody who's buying our products the option for it to end up in the right place. And we have a compost facility that we partner with, and we basically collect the bags. And we collect the bags. We want to be able to track them and see what people are sending back and have those metrics and stuff. And then we sort them, make sure we're only sending them our bags, which we know are compostable because sometimes they send in like other people return like other stuff too. And then we send it off to the compost facility once a quarter and then they compost it. So that's basically like how we've worked around it. And it's definitely not perfect, but it's definitely better than selling food in plastic. So, you know, it's like we're pretty proud of what we built, but I still am so excited to see continued progress from like the overall end of life infrastructure more broadly in terms of like the compost facilities and just, you know, the municipalities and whatnot.
It's just the start of a complete redesign of the system, isn't it? It's the circularity element, the design, circularity design, you know, it's just,
yeah. Well, and it's interesting because like, I'm like, you know, I've said we have a North Star of moving the industry away from plastic. Our North Star is not selling products in compostable packaging. So like we're also like, how else can we do this even better? We're actually piloting with a major, company here in the US. Well, they're a global company, but we're piloting with them a reusable program. It's a business, one of our B2B customers. And that's buying our snacks for their break rooms. And we're piloting with them a reusable program where we're actually sending them like 10 pounds of like our nut mixes in reusable bags. Oh, cool. And we're like, that's a solution for food service. It might also be a solution for our direct to consumer customers as well. But ultimately like trying to see maybe there's a reusable part of this too, not just compostable. So we're really just trying to get better and better with it every year as much as we can.
I think it's just incredible because you're a small company, you run it with your husband and you're finding solutions to these big problems. And then you think about like huge CPG companies that have barely moved the needle on these issues. Yeah. But anyway, we can talk about that in a sec. But I wanted to ask you about the sort of how you manage that from a business perspective. I know that you've you've obviously had a ton of experience to different businesses. And I imagine that the Sandback program adds a bit to logistics and the cost base. Like, how are you managing it?
Yeah, we actually, so right now we charge for it, which is like pretty incredible because we don't make profit on it, but we charge enough to cover the cost of shipping it back, the cost of like the envelope, and like the dollar in labor that's required, so it's like it's basically $10 for a bag, and I think it holds up to 40 bags if you if you put them in thoughtfully. You cram them in a little bit less, but anyways, so we charge for it right now to just cover our costs. Right. And ultimately my goal is to offer it for free. Like I hope to offer it for free. We've also thought about like maybe we can offer it for free to like VIP customers, or maybe not everybody, but for certain, once you spend over a certain amount or something like that. So that's a goal in early 2024, is to hopefully have that become free, because we have a lot of people doing it right now, but obviously even more will do it if they're not paying for it. But to me, it's incredible that people pay for it. I'm like, people care, and like they want to do it, and they want to do their part, and they're willing to not just support brands that are doing the right thing, but also go out of their way to really take responsibility on where their bags are ending up.
Yeah, that's incredible. What an amazing customer base you have. I mean, it's like they recognize that the system needs to change, and that someone needs to help pay for that, that change of the system, which is incredible. Good on them. I would definitely pay for it for sure myself too, if it was an option for me, and I wish it was. I think that, I mean, it would be amazing. And now you've already talked about the wholesale, and so mainly your wholesale customers are typically like corporates who put it in their break rooms. Are there other types of wholesale that you do?
Yeah, it tends to be we focus outside the grocery store, so we focus in what we call like the food service channels. That's basically places that are like serving snacks to employees or guests or whatnot. Corporates, big for us, because a lot of large corporations here have zero waste commitments. And even though like we do work with a lot of the tech companies, which although snacks is not like the key thing they're focused on, they spend a lot of money on snacks, and it's a big part of like when they look in their trash cans, like it's the snack wrappers that are in their trash can. So that's a big customer base for us, or like specifically like tech corporate offices, but also other ones as well. A lot of hotels, especially kind of the higher end hotels, whose guests are caring more and more about plastic now, like they're being asked to reduce plastic. And then we also work with some like stadiums and some sports teams and some like music amphitheaters. So we kind of have a broad range, but the common thread is businesses that have sustainability and zero waste initiatives.
Right. And California is obviously very forward thinking. So you're getting more and more of that over there, which will hopefully start to trickle out to the rest of the world.
Exactly. Exactly.
And thinking about Sun Swell from a financial perspective or from a business perspective, you're offering up investment in Sun Swell to the public. So I wanted to know how you're approaching that and what you see as sort of the benefits of doing that approach versus going to your more typical VC PE investor.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we fit a cookie cutter like mold of like a typical. So we tend to get grouped into like the CPG category, but we're definitely not typical CPG. Like if we wanted to be typical CPG, we would make 3 SKUs and just go sell them in a bunch of doors and like make sure they're like we've definitely not that was like a path that we decided not to take after year 1. We decided we wanted this much bigger issue that we wanted to solve. So I don't know. We just kind of realized early on, like it's probably not the best fit for us. A, we don't fit a typical mold, and B, we are not willing to do like the growth at all costs model. Like it's not like we believe we grow fast, and we believe that we have enormous potential. It's not like, oh, we're sustainable, like this is going to be small. We are already like, there's so much potential for what we can do, but we want to make sure that the investors who are investing in us are like very mission aligned first and foremost. Right. And I think there potentially are some institutional funds that could be good partners down the road. But for now, we found that doing it with like not with mission aligned investors, which tends to be like our customers and fans of the brand. And it also like just from a, from a broader perspective, like when you bring in venture dollars, like it's just kind of perpetuating that like system of like, this 1% of people are like benefiting from like all of the like, like our growth. Like what we love about it is it's really like when it's called equity crowdfunding. So basically people can invest for as little as $500.
Amazing.
It's basically democratizing the fundraising process. So now like everybody can own a little piece of the pie versus just like one person owning a huge piece of the pie, and so it's just aligned with us as a company. It's aligned with like what our hearts, like who we want our investors to be. And it's really cool. I haven't done this yet. It's like on my list. I want to ask a bunch of our investors to like submit their photos. And then I just want to have like a page on our website that's like our investors. And you can see all the different like types of people who are investing in us. It's like, it's really cool. And I think humbling to like have your community support your growth, it's not like you're having to convince one person to write you a huge check. You're like, hey, you believe in us? Like, be a part of it.
I love that. I think that's so cool. I love that concept. It's just making it so much more inclusive. So many more people invested in a bigger problem-solving endeavor that actually is creating value for the community in which it operates. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Really love that. And that kind of is a good segue into the B-Corp point. So Sun Swell is a B-Corp, and you guys obviously have been a B-Corp for a long time. How did you find the process of gaining the certification, and what have your reflections been on the value of it more generally since becoming a B-Corp?
Yeah, it's funny because I learned about it like 6 months into our journey of launching the business, and one of my old college professors introduced me to two of his current students who were starting a little consulting business in Santa Barbara to help companies like build with their sustainability goals. And one thing they did was help you with their B Corp cert. And I was like, I don't even know what a B Corp is. I just know Patagonia is one. So just as a side note, Patagonia is headquartered like 30 minutes from us. And so like, that is like they're in our backyard. Like that's like, you can feel like the Patagonia vibes like everywhere around here, and when all I knew was Patagonia was a B Corp. So I was like, well, I want to be a B Corp too. Like I can be a B Corp. I didn't know that. And so I met with them, and it just worked out because I was like their first client. So they cut me a killer deal, which like there's no way I would have been able to afford consultants at that time. But it was kind of like we were able to work together. And I feel like it was so much easier starting, like getting the B Corp certification from the very beginning versus waiting for later, because once you're a big company, like, and then you have to add on, it's like almost like from a financial perspective, you're going to be adding on costs, which is like even if you want to do that in your heart, if you don't have like the dollars to do that, like you can't. And so for us, because it was built into like our business from day one, it wasn't a decision I had to make later. And I look at I think it's super admirable of the companies out there that are like massive companies that have gotten B Corp certified, that because it's like the work that they had to go through to like being like a $1 billion company and B Corp certified. I mean, that's like a lot of work probably for most companies. Most companies aren't like Patagonia, where they just like are like they're, raised, at least most established companies don't start out like Patagonia. I think these days like emerging brands are aspire to be more like Patagonia. So we are starting out like them. But so yeah, I mean, for us, it was the certification process was relatively easy because we were really small. It was like only like a lot of the decisions we had made like already like gave us, with B Corp, it's like a score, like you have to get above a certain score to get your certification. So we weren't that far away from the score, just running the business the way we were. And then we just had to make some like some small changes to kind of get the certification. And now it's more just about like, as we grow, making sure, and as our business evolves, making sure we're like maintaining and improving as we go along.
So every year you have to go back and sort of make sure that you're still aligned there.
Yeah. Internally, we do like an annual review process. Our research is every 3 years, but I think but yeah, internally, we always do like an annual refresh to like say like, okay, like, is there anything that kind of fell off the radar? Is there anything that we like, so we have our processes in place, but we always revisit every year to like make sure we're, if like at least maintaining, but usually we are trying to do better. We always have a goal to do better than we did the year before. And we always want our recert number to go up. So like when we because you can't actually change your number until you do this recertification. So
Right.
we're like, by the time we get the recertification, we want to see like actual like tangible number increase. So
Right. And when you're making new business decisions that haven't yet been, thought about from a B Corp perspective, do you use their principles and their guidelines as to help you sort of make the right decision or the sort of perceived right decision?
yeah, it's almost easier. It's easier in some than others. Like for like service providers, for example, um, our they actually stopped doing bookkeepers, but so they're not our bookkeepers anymore, but they're still our tax accountants is a B Corp certified accounting firm, which is like, it's a
Amazing.
little that's like easy because it's like, okay, like where it gets a little bit harder is like when you're trying to source an ingredient and maybe you find 3 suppliers of the ingredient, like it's unlikely that they're B Corps. Like it's more rare that you find like you can source an ingredient. Like those things are harder. So it's like when we have the options and then like we'll always favor the B Corp, but we don't always have the options. But it also makes us think about like similarly when we we prioritize women or minority owned businesses in addition to B Corps in the same way that we prioritize like local as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the options just aren't there, or the options aren't there in a way that like makes business sense. Like if we go with this ingredient over another, like literally we'll have to double our price. Like sometimes it just doesn't make business sense and you can't. But in most cases, if there's an option and it's a pretty easy choice of like, okay, we're going with like the B Corp or women owned and minority owned, if we can.
I think you've kind of covered this already, but in case you have any other reflections, I mean, you have come from a business background, you've been exposed to a ton of businesses out there. What's different about running a B Corp from what you've seen previously, aside from what you've maybe shared already, which makes it pretty obvious?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like, so before learning about B Corps and like before like starting my journey, like when I thought about business success, like for what I was trained to know about business success, is it was all about like profit and shareholders. Like that you cared about profit and shareholders. That was like kind of the when I started in accounting, I got an MBA, like that was kind of like the overall like thing that you learned about. With the B Corp, like it's really about all stakeholders. And so all stakeholders include employees, it includes customers, it includes the environment. So yes, of course, profit matters, because if you can't be profitable, like your business isn't going to be around. And I think that's a common misconception that some people have, like, oh, if you're a business focused on sustainability, or if like you're a B Corp, like you don't care about profit. Like we absolutely care about profit. We absolutely want to be a big business, because we can't have a massive impact unless we care about that stuff. That's critical to being able to have the impact that we want to have. But, it's also caring about those other things along the way. And that's the biggest difference. Is it's not just caring. It's not either or, it's and. You're just thinking about them all.
Yeah, amazing. And you talked a little bit already about sort of what you track. Like you track various metrics on the SENBRAC program. You obviously do your annual review for the B Corp. How else are you thinking about and measuring impact, which I know is a really tough thing to measure?
Yeah, like the main metric that we look at is like number of plastic bags saved, what's the word? Number of plastic bags avoided. So that's like the first and foremost. And we also, like, a lot of our wholesale customers we'll give them that metric too. We'll often translate it not just bags, but into like pounds. And from there, the other things we look at is like number of organic family farms supported. We were just talking about the suppliers. We look at like diversity in supplier base. What % of our supplier base is diverse, or same with like employee base. So it's like it's kind of across the board. We're looking at like things, but largely because of like we track it based on the B Corp. But the plastic bags saved is like the main metric that like the big metric that we kind of look at as a team.
Yeah, and that one is, you can pretty clearly link that through to impact and reasonably easy to calculate.
It's easy to track. Like it's just based on unit sales, and then we can convert it to like weight based on like bag weight and stuff like that.
Yeah. Do you guys do a sustainability report or sort of report?
We do an impact report. Yeah, we do an annual impact report. Yes.
Yeah, amazing. And I wanted to get your thoughts. We've talked again a little bit about this already, but given your experience, and you've obviously been researching, the industry more broadly, we know the food industry is a while off being sort of sustainable at scale, which is your goal. What bugs you about the industry today in particular, and what do you think it's going to take to make sustainability ubiquitous globally? I'm talking about big picture here.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the inherent things that I don't even like that we don't, the obvious, like everything's in plastic, like everything's junk food, like those things just are what they are. It's been that way for 60 years. And now all of our little emerging brands are trying to change it. I think what bothers me, like when I think of like what I see on LinkedIn, that kind of like just always like makes you be like, like I don't like that. I don't like that vibe. And it's not just with the food industry, it's across things. And it's when companies make changes and they get like torn down because their changes aren't good enough. Like, I feel like this isn't related to the food industry, but there was just all this controversy with like apples. Like Apple did, you see the Apple stuff? Like it was like Apple did an ad and it was all about how sustainable they are. And it was like considered greenwashing. I'm like, listen, you can argue that the marketing is what it is, but at the end of the day, like they're doing better than they were before. And I think that's like, it's often like other industry people that are like trying to tear down. It's like almost like out of like, I don't want you to be successful. I don't want you to get credit for this. And I see that a lot in like the food industry. Like I mean, personally, we've like, I remember when we first launched and we were like, we have dates in our products and we get complaints that like dates are high in sugar. And we're like, but it's like, so we've gotten it a lot. You get it all. I see it all the time to other sustainable brands where they'll be making like really good choices. And then you'll see like them getting kind of like criticized for other things. And it's just like, it's a fine line between, I definitely don't believe in greenwashing. Like that is a no-no, but it's a fine line between like greenwashing and also just like recognizing that like, it's like this progress, not perfection, and like giving people credit. Cause if you can't give, if every time that like a company makes progress, they're just told it's not good enough, they're not going to care anymore. They're not going to want to do it anymore. And yeah, maybe it's not coming from the executives. Maybe it's coming from their younger employees that are like, if you guys don't do this, we don't want to work here. So they have to do it to adopt the employees. Who cares what the motives are, but like changes are happening. I think that's like the thing that right now I'm seeing a lot of on like LinkedIn. Like when I go on LinkedIn, I see a lot of that. That's like the thing. I'm like, I just want to see us all supporting each other. But it's a fine line. Like greenwashing's a touchy subject, and it definitely is. It's definitely done a lot. So it's I also hate greenwashing. So it's like
it's so tricky, isn't it? Yeah,
we balance it.
I was talking about this with a colleague the other day, and it's like, how do you firstly like decipher between what is truly greenwashing versus what is genuine efforts to make change, even though maybe the rest of the business is still polluting or whatever.
Right.
And also, how do you think about a company who's historically been awful and is now really putting in meaningful efforts? Like, are they written off forever? Do you give them a second chance? Like, are they cancelled, or do you sort of celebrate them sort of making change? It's like, I think
I
everyone
don't even know.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. Like, what happens when Shell does good things? Like, I don't think we celebrate it, but like, should we be? Like, I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I think it's just, in general, just, it's almost like focus, like, let's just keep trying to do the best that we can do as individuals. And as like, like just keep trying to do our best. And like, I don't know. It's hard though. It's fine. There's fine lines, and I don't even know where I land on, I'm like, I don't even really know what I think about that Apple ad. I just know that I saw like I'm not saying I like support, I just don't even know. I just know it was like all over my feed only in a negative light. And I'm like, well, they were doing some stuff. So like, does that just not matter? So it's, I don't know. It's like I just was kind of stuck. I was like, it's a weird thing to think about, but
yeah, it's definitely, it feels wrong to tear them down. That's definitely not the right answer.
Right.
So the way that we approach it, because we have this problem on our site quite a bit, where we have, a brand who's not entirely sustainable, but they've got a new sustainable range out.
Yes.
That is genuinely sustainable. And they put a lot of effort into, I mean, when I say sustainable, it's a reasonably loose term. I mean, like they put effort into putting, new things into their products that are more sustainable than previously.
Right.
And what we do is say, these are the most sustainable products within their product range, and this is where we would suggest you support them, as opposed to like highlighting all the
Yes,
rubbish.
the brand, right.
Yeah.
It's not like the greenest brand in the world. It's like this product is worth looking at. And a lot of times in that industry, it might stand out as the most sustainable option, whatever I mean, I'm just making something up, but like frying pans or something. Like maybe there's still a reason it's not the most sustainable, but it's the best one out there. And as a consumer, I want to know that, like, what's the best one out there, like, so, yeah, it's tricky, but we're navigating. I saw that in the EU, they're trying to ban like words like certain words on packaging, like biodegradable and earth friendly or eco friendly and those kinds of words. I'm like, I think that type of stuff is the right direction, because when you can start, I see this in the health industry all the time when people say things are clean label or they say they're natural or they're healthy and they're not. It's like they're just not. And I don't think we'll ever be able to control like the marketing that goes on around it, but at least on a package, when somebody's like sitting at a grocery store looking at a box of cereal, if it says all natural, like it shouldn't be loaded with sugar, So it's like, I think that like starting with like that, the packaging requirements, I think is a good place to start. And I think as consumers, we just need to be aware that advertisements are always going to be just there to sell us. So
totally. And that's where certifications like B-Corp and, like home compostable certifications come in and really help consumers make the right decisions. Yeah. But it takes like, not everyone's up to date on their certifications, So anyway, we're right in the middle of the thick of this like spaghetti squash thing happening with the completely transforming food industry. I mean, and all industries more broadly. So, it's confusing time for consumers, but we're getting there, making progress.
Yes.
And we talked a little bit about circularity, but I want to dive into that a tiny bit more. So you're obviously trying to build a circular system. And so what role do you think circularity, as a concept will play in the food industry going forward? Where do you think the investment is really needed to make that jump forward?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've heard about a lot of investment going into the recycling system. I don't know, like that system is so broken. It's been broken for so long. Like I'm optimistic, but I don't know what to think about that. Ultimately, like the holy grail is like reusable, but like even reusable has like, for example, like if we're not doing this, but let's say we started to decide we're going to sell we want to do reusable. So we started selling everything in jars, shipping jars across the country, like isn't the best thing. So, it's kind of, so I think that to me, like the food industry, I see people trying, I see like, and nobody's trying to do that. Like nobody's trying to ship jars, but like people know like that's not the better option. But I have seen like more localized like jar delivery stuff. I think that we're all like what we should all be working towards is reusable if it works in whatever, like if it makes sense. That should be like what the goal is. Like no single use packaging is really like the goal. If in my perspective, if it can't be if that's not an option, then compostable is the solution, but we got to get compostable composted so it turns back into soil and it starts like the cycle all over again. So that's kind of like how I think about it. It's like, let's try to do reusable when we can. If not, compostable is the next best thing. Based on everything I've seen with like the recycling issues, I think that's where we are right now. But again, compostable infrastructure has a whole different thing. I think that circularity we're closer at figuring out solutions like outside of the food industry. And so this is not related to Sun Swell, but I've obviously become way more interested in like circularity and stuff like that since starting Sun Swell and since moving into this world of a truly sustainable business. And I've since started like a little side project with my mom. We're calling it the Scraps Project, where we're taking clothing, not like used clothing, but like scraps from like fashion brands that like never turned them into product. That's like not the dead stock, but like stuff that like we worked with a local Santa Barbara company that had a bunch of fabric scraps in their HQ that like they were using for like merchandising, like looking at it and approving and stuff like that. And she's turning those into like upcycled goods. That's like our little side project. That's like the blip on the radar, because like I just was like, I gotta do something like this, like space, because it's like so that's like our little side project. But I think that's where you're going to start to see circularity have like a bigger impact faster, is in that world with like the repair shops, like the fashion repair shop, like all Patagonia has their repair shop, and REI and a lot of stores now are adding that kind of stuff. And then also like just going back to like longer term use products that can be repaired, not designed to break and throw away. Totally. And so I don't know, in food, it's almost like it's a little bit more of a single use industry, because we eat and then we're done. And so but yeah, it's ever evolving in my mind too, with where we end up there. But I think it's prioritizing reusable. If you can't, then compostable is where we're trying to make our impact.
Makes sense. And I think it's similar for the sort of personal care, like your deodorant, like you use it and then it's done. It's not something you hold for 10 years, right? So having sort of relatively simple packaging options for that is going to be key. Yeah. Now, you are a mom and an entrepreneur, and you've been doing this for a while. Are there any tips, tricks, hacks, ideas that you can share for aspiring entrepreneurs out there who are really thinking about starting a sustainability or a mission impact focused business like yours?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is going into it, like knowing what, almost like taking the time to learn about like yourself and what you're looking for and what like you're passionate about, what your motivations are, like before launching, like just taking a little bit of time. Like it took me a while. Like we started as kind of a different company. We never truly pivoted. Like we didn't go from one to another, but like starting as like a CPG brand, then like transitioning to this like broader like food retailer that's trying to like that took time and resources to do that. And I think that if I would have, when I started the company, so I talk about it as like your like living in like your masculine versus your feminine energy. I don't know if you've heard that concept before, but like masculine energy is like goals, metrics, logic. Feminine energy is intuition, going with the flow, like trusting your gut. I spent my entire career in like the masculine energy. Like I was like an accountant, an MBA, like a consultant, like everything was in that. And when I started Sun Swell, even though deep down in my soul, like I know, like now I've discovered it was all about building this like mission-driven company. When I first started, I was like, I want to be like the next RX bar and go from like 0 to 100 million in like snack foods in 3 years. It just was like very like ego driven kind of. Like it wasn't driven by like my heart. It was driven by like what I wanted to like post on LinkedIn. And so I was really not operating from a place of authenticity when I first started. Now, at the end of the day, I was making healthy snacks. That was super authentic. Like I wanted to do that, but like in how I was approaching the business, I don't think I was quite clear on like why I was doing it. Now I've realized our purpose, and like the business has like shifted to really for us to be able to fulfill that, which not just is fulfilling to me, but when you're operating out of a place of like authenticity and purpose, that's when you can make a massive impact, because that's when you want to keep going. That's like when you're going to go through the like roller coaster, because it's not a straight line, it's ups and downs. And like, but to navigate that, you have to be operating from a place of like happiness and where your heart. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs jump in just wanting to like launch and have this big exit. And like, it's more about the end point than the journey. And if you can take a step back and say, hey, this is going to be a journey. Like, how do I enjoy the journey? What do I want to do? I think I would have gotten to where I am now sooner if I would have started from a place of that. But that's all stuff we learned along the way. That's the whole point of it all, right?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I love that masculinity versus femininity thinking.
Yeah. And it's not gender specific. We all, no matter what you identify with, you should have both. It's a balance of both. And like that, it's funny because the masculine energy is like, go, go, go. Like, that's like, I even look at how I used to exercise and I was like, I don't have time for yoga. Like, that's too slow. And now I'm like, oh, like I have to slow down. That forces me to slow down. And I think we don't realize that sometimes. It's all about like, I'm going to go to like my spin class and burn like 300 calories in 20 minutes. So it's like, versus like, no, my body also needs like that calmness. And some people might be too far on the other end. And if you're an entrepreneur, maybe too far in the feminine energy, maybe you're not creating the action plan to take your first step and to get going. I was far in one direction, but if you're far in the other direction, you might like know what your soul desires, but you can't get the motivation to just take one step, or you won't because you're not focusing on goals and action plans. So you need both.
Yeah. Oh, it really resonates with me. I'm definitely in that space of just go, 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 and do not
Yes.
have the more intuitive side.
Just keep going.
Yeah, I was talking about it with my counselor the other day. She was like, "Oh, you got to fix some things. Like you're a little bit too wired, like."
Yes.
Yeah,
We'll have a conversation about that separately, because that's
yeah.
been like, I feel like that's like been my past 2 years. I got that feedback like 2 years ago, and it's been like a journey away from that ever since. So, but yeah, it's a whole thing. We all got to be working on ourselves.
So interesting. And you talked a little bit about your sort of big picture goals, where you guys are heading, but what's sort of in the immediate future, 2024, what's next for you guys and for you personally?
Yeah. So from a business standpoint overall, like our goal is to just our offering is, I don't want to say our offering is simple, because the amount of work that went into getting where we are today was not simple. But we sell like snacks and staples, pack plastic free. Like that's what we do. And really our focus over the next year is to just get the word out more, and to keep doing what we're doing and do more of it. And no major changes next year, like at least that I know of. This year we had a lot of like crazy operational growth. So there was like a scaling thing we had to deal with, but we've dealt with all of that. So now we're like, all right, we're just ready to keep going. So hopefully next year is just kind of like just doing more of what we're doing. Yeah. And then personally, I think for me, it's kind of what I just talked about. Like, I think for when starting to run this business, it was so much on it was just about like and I was so focused on the end goal. And it's like, when we started focusing on like just leading from like this place of like happiness, everything just started to flow and like happen the way it was supposed to. And like growth started coming in faster than it was ever before, because we were like, it's so, for me, it's like the continued focus on like self and mindset. And I'm like it's become like something I'm really excited about. I love like sharing with my team. I love like sharing with like other people. And so that's kind of where I feel like I'm a 10 times better leader when I can continue to like stay in the right mindset and stay in this, like, just keep operating from this place of like, from my heart, basically.
I love that. So cool. And maybe that will be your answer to the next question too, which is totally fine. So this is something that we ask everybody, just because it's an interesting thing to reflect on. But if you could have one message or piece of advice truly heard by every single person on the planet, what would it be?
So my advice for everybody is to trust that the universe has a plan for you. Because I think every time something, like, nobody's life is just perfect, like no hardship. It's always full of ups and downs and challenges. I think the way you weather those challenges, especially if you're anybody with any goal you don't have to be an entrepreneur. You could be trying to go zero waste. You could be trying to, just be a good mom, whatever you're trying to be a good mom, you're always gonna be harsh on yourself. But my point is, just trust that like everything happens for a reason. You're exactly where you need to be. Like when things that feel hard fall on you, instead of being upset about it, ask like, what's the lesson? What lesson am I learning? Why am I here? What lesson am I learning? And I think if you can go in with that mindset, you can accomplish anything. You can do whatever you want to do. And you'll be happy doing it.
Love it. So good. And this is obvious. We've got the Sun Swell website up there, but for people who want to follow along with you and with Sun Swell and support you, and maybe there's some corporates out there listening who want to buy from wholesale from Sun Swell, is just the website the best place to start and go from there?
I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. So if you look at my name in our company, I'm pretty easy to find. So that's a really great way to get in touch too.
And of course, we'll add all of that to the show notes as well. So that should be easy to find for anyone listening as well.
Amazing.
So Kate, thank you so much for your time. It's been such a pleasure chatting to you. And I really wish Sun Swell was available here in Melbourne. So I hope that this idea goes global.
We're working on it. All right. Well, it's so good talking. Great. Thank you.
I loved this chat with Kate, full of great advice and generous sharing of her journey. I hope you found it helpful and interesting too. In particular, I've been reflecting on how we have a collective responsibility to support organizations and people who are genuinely doing better, not tearing them down. Unless, of course, there's greenwashing, then tear away. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Let me know over on the socials. Thank you for listening all the way to the end, and I'll catch you next time.